Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar titled Substrate Preparation and Tile Installation. I'm Jim Olson with the National Tile Contractors Association, and I want to welcome you and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend today's webinar sponsored by Custom Building Products. Before I introduce today's speaker, I want to remind you that during the webinar you will be muted. Please use the questions area on your website and on your computer and type in your questions, and we'll answer any questions at the end of this presentation. So just want you to know, if the audio on your computer is poor, call the phone number on the invite to this webinar and you can listen on your phone. All NTCA webinars are available to watch at any time on the NTCA YouTube channel shortly after the webinars are presented. This will give you easy access to watch and or share all current and past programs at your convenience. All right, here we go. I'm very happy to introduce today's speaker, Matt Minney. He's a commercial sales manager for Custom Building Products. He's got more than 30 years in the concrete and flooring industry. Minney brings a wealth of practical knowledge and hands-on experience to every training session. His background includes everything from concrete restoration and moisture mitigation to owning and operating a self-leveling company. Over the years, Matt has led the execution of some of the largest self-leveling projects in North America, including 5 projects, each exceeding 1 million square feet. Matt has worked closely with the major manufacturers of self-leveling and tile installation systems and played a key role in developing one of the first true cement-based self-leveling products designed for use over wood substrates without requiring lath. His unique perspective from both the field and the manufacturing side gives him a well-rounded understanding of the challenges contractors face on real-world job sites. In his current role with Custom Building Products, Matt focuses on supporting contractors with proven solutions that improve job site efficiency, reduce risk, and ensure long-term performance. His goal is to help installers build confidence in their work through proper prep, product knowledge, and field-tested best practices. Welcome, Matt. Look forward to your program.
Excellent. Well, thanks for having me, and everybody else that's on today. Today is going to be a kind of an interesting concept here. We're going to talk about moisture mitigation, some self-leveling, different substrates, some prep that goes with everything. It's going to be kind of a more of a higher, not a higher level conversation, but a basic conversation, because each one of these things that we'll discuss today could take half day to a full day, even just going over some of the basic installations. But yeah, I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to speaking with everybody. Just kind of give you guys an overview of, if you know who Custom Building Products is or does not, if you're first to this or first of hearing Custom Building Products is a tile and stone and flooring industry manufacturer. We've actually been in business since 1964. So we have a long-standing as far as history and tradition, as far as on the tile and stone installation products. 60 years, it's our history. In 2013, as we jump ahead, the Quikrete companies had decided to purchase and acquire the Custom Building Products company. With doing that, it allowed for us to expand our manufacturing. It helped us with the raw materials. It helps us with even shipping and distribution. So it worked out really well for Quikrete to come in and take a look at Custom. But also with that, it adds to Quikrete's portfolio of being able to service full jobs, from the ground up. So it's a nice fit for us. Manufacturing, one of the things that Custom's been doing here lately is we're really trying to get our efficiencies up and be able to respond faster to customers, be able to go into the automation side. We know that all of these commercial projects we're getting into, schedules are getting pushed faster and faster and faster. So we're trying to adjust as far as with us to be able to manufacture product, have it available, have it ready, but also be able to ship to job sites or ship to distribution or even to you guys as far as your offices and your warehouses. Some people don't realize how big, custom building products actually is. We have 16 manufacturing locations across US and Canada. We are one of the largest made in the USA cement-based, product manufacturers. It's amazing on how many plants we have throughout the country. So that was the stuff on as far as custom. Rolling into the good stuff here, guys and gals. When discussions have come up for me, especially in the last probably 3 or 4 years, moisture has been somewhat of a topic, even with tile and stone installers. A lot of times, porcelain's not affected by, any type of water or moisture or humidity, doesn't break down. But we're finding that, the cementitious grouts and different types of minerals that are in the concrete, any type of things can now affect as far as even the tile that we're getting into. So we're going to walk through kind of just the basics of, moisture mitigation, how it affects tile, and then how to fix it. And for the contractors that are on here today, why to think about it. When you're on job sites and stuff, a lot of times, if you're not doing soft goods, you have guys that are doing resilient that's there too. They're testing the floor for what the moisture content is in the slabs. So it's something that you could, add on to your arsenal as well to offer to a general contractor or to a customer. There's a lot of things we can look at here to help as far as advance just your knowledge, but also your expertise into what you can service. I always kind of like to show how bad can it be. I've only got a couple slides on that. You guys have all seen this. You get the push-ups, the shadowings that starts to come through the grout joints, shading out. It's just it's moisture that's trying to acclimate with the building, and it's pushing up through, and it's creating the path of least resistance, which usually is your grout joint, which makes a bad look. Can affect the grouts as far as if you have a high salt content, can eat it. So it goes from there. If you have some of your conglomerates and some of your other type of epoxy, tiles or synthetics, you can actually start to get moisture that will actually affect even the color and changing. I mean, we all know about the old moisture sensitive, green marbles and stuff like that would warp and cup. Now even these epoxy resin back tiles, if there's a high moisture content there, they can start to curl or they don't bond well. So it's, things to think about when you're on site, prepping and getting ready to install your tile. Two that I've seen as far as just amazing on, what can push through a slab, and, it just creates issues for all of us. And at the end of the day, we got to figure out ways to stop it, but also how to fix it. I threw this one in here for guys that are, resilient side on sometimes how bad it can actually get with resilient, because it's truly trapping it underneath. You get everything from the salts, coming up through to the moisture, the re-emulsification of adhesives, mold, mildew, all that good stuff. It's just, it's incredible on what just moisture can do as far as with the concrete and with the floor finishes. But it's also, not just moisture, it's also, like I said, the salts and the different materials that are coming up through the slab. Common causes for moisture issues: new construction, and fast track projects. That seems to be when we're in new construction phase. We come onto a job site, usually concrete's only about maybe 90 days old. It could be, 50 days old, 60 days old, depends. Sometimes you get on a slab that, it may be 6 months old. But the thing to think about is a lot of times when we're on the job sites, the buildings aren't acclimated, especially for new construction. When we come in, You know, you have green concrete, could be a hot day, could have rained one day, and next thing you know, it's the slabs re-wet out, you know, which now concrete's porous. We all know that. It sucks it up like a sponge. Now it's wet again. So it takes in the moisture. With concrete, we always hear 28 days. 28 days for strength, 28 days for strength. That's a big key factor for just the strength of concrete. We're going to hit as far as, you know, its ideal strength of a PSI, 3,500, 4,000 PSI, that 28 days, that number. It does not equate to our moisture numbers. So when you get into these slabs, especially new construction, pan on deck, or like we have the picture on my side to my left of the construction worker, you know, hosing down the vapor barrier to help as far as the movement and placing of the concrete, just so it makes it a little bit easier to move. You're adding more water to that mix. That water of convenience is really creating the issues that we're going to deal with later on. Plus, it actually can weaken the actual mix of concrete. So it's something to think about for new construction. When we're walking in, you know, how young is this concrete? You know, we should do some type of moisture testing. What are we seeing? You know, are the air handlers on? You know, to see if it helps dissipate the moisture and everything else. This slide here is one of my favorite slides to talk about when we talk about the days. So in the first, you know, column, we have the water of convenience ratio for concrete. Then you have your vapor barrier that's there. These numbers that you see where the vapor barrier, vapor retarder is, the blotter course, the no blotter course retarder, those are actual days. You're looking at, it could take 365 days for concrete to actually dry out with no blotter course or vapor, you know, vapor retarder underneath. And that's optimal conditions. No, you know, rain hitting on it, none of that kind of stuff that goes, you know, that could create any issues. It really comes down to, you know, stopping as far as any type of moisture getting to that slab. That's why when you hear guys testing for resilient with the ASTM F710, a lot of times when you're testing, or even for calcium chloride and RH, building has to be enclosed. You have to have the air handlers on, drawing in the moisture, getting that room acclimated to what the conditions will be before we install our tile. As soon as they turn the air handlers on and everything's set, that actually starts as your day one for when that building is starting to actually dry out. When you come in and do your probe tests and everything else, you'll see you're going to be high, and then next thing you know, it will acclimate it. With moisture vapor, it's drawing the moisture out because it wants to find an equilibrium inside itself. So, you know, which is inside the room from ceiling to floor. Other common causes for moisture issues, renovations and outside sources. These are things to think about when you're coming into a building, especially with renovation. Building has had no issues with any kind of moisture in the past. It's, you know, we're good to go. Building's 15 years old. Well, now you're putting in trenches, or guys are moving old plumbing, or different, you know, different construction trades are coming in and taking care of things that need to be done for the new tenants that are coming in for the space. When you, especially on grade, you start cutting into the slab below, now you're actually 9 chances out of 10 going to disrupt the vapor barrier. Once you break that vapor barrier, there's no way to stop any moisture vapor from coming up unless you try to reattach the vapor barrier properly underneath the concrete and tying it in. It's a whole different process if you're actually going to attempt it. If not, you're going to have to address it on top of the slab. Other things that people don't think about that could be creating, you know, moisture issues for us is outside sources. I can tell you I've been on probably at least 50 projects where we've had moisture issues, and it comes from the irrigation systems that are out there. And, you know, usually they're facing the building because someone walks by and it sprays them, so they turn the head. And next thing you know, it's just spraying and spraying and spraying, finds water, finds path of least resistance. Now it's in the building. So when you're walking through, if you do see you have a moisture issue, I always tell people, take a walk around the building, see if it could be a clogged, you know, spouting. It could be a trench, you know, that's got leaves in it. Now you have water pushing back. You might not have to mitigate or address. It could be an outside source. That could be an easy, quick fix. But just things to think about for other issues that, you know, come across with moisture. So if we find out we do have moisture issues, when we come in, there's two different testing methods that are out there now. We have the ASTM F1869, which is your calcium chloride. That, you know, is to my, you know, left side. It's the old puck where you grind out your area, make sure it's clean, sound, solid. You weigh out your puck, you put it down, you seal out the box, and then you come back 72 hours, you reweigh it, gives you an idea as far as how many pounds of moisture is actually transferring through the slab and coming out. There's also the ASTM, you know, F2170 RH test. That seems to be the direction a lot of our industry is going, is the probe tests, because it's actually a lot more convenient and easier to use. You can come in, you drill down, you put the probe in 40% the depth of the slab. Now they have the ones where you stick the sleeves in, you come in with your reader, you can put a cap over them, and you can test, and they stay there. So if there ever is an issue, you can come back, pull it in, and say, oh, I'm popping 89, or hey, I'm at 99%, you know, RH. You know, you can map it out and see what's there. Whereas the calcium chloride, that is just a picture in time of the 72 hours that you had tested the slab. It's not giving you an overall reading. You can come back the next, you know, 2 weeks later, test again, and it could be a different weight as far as that's in there. A lot of people don't realize the calcium chloride and RH testing are two totally different tests. They do not correlate in any types of readings. So if someone says, hey, I've got 12 pounds of moisture from my calcium chloride test, it doesn't mean that it's 85% RH. They're two totally different tests. The RH test is reading the relative humidity that's inside the slab, and the calcium chloride is actually reading what's coming through the slab and actually particulating up into the air. Two different tests. If someone asked me which one's better, what would you do? Unfortunately, I always tell people, you know, go with your gut. I do have contractors that actually do both with the RH and calcium chloride to get, you know, both readings to see, you know, kind of how they weigh out, go from there. The standard for the tests, as far as how many you need for a job, it's 3 for the first 1,000 square feet, then it's 1 per additional 1,000 square feet afterwards. So calcium chloride, if you had a 100,000 square foot job you were testing, that's a whole lot of pucks that are throughout that slab everywhere. Whereas if you did an RH, you just drill in holes, still in the same number, but they're not as obtrusive. Guys don't kick them around. Guys don't play hockey with them, you know, because they're in the ground, you know, as far as they're in the concrete and state. But it's kind of the two methods that we see for moisture testing. There are other types of readings of meters and stuff. Most of it is more of a just to qualify to see if there could be moisture there, but these are the two main tests that you would see within your ANSI standards and your ASTM standards. Your ASTM standard for, you know, moisture mitigation and for fixing any kind of area, it is a designation of a 3010. That is the standard if you guys need it. I know that we have copies of these for people as well. It really spells out the process of, you know, what you need to do, what's covered in the ASTM 3010. So when you do have a problem, and you have to figure out, you know, as far as what you're going to do about the problem, you know, to me, you always want to look for a reputable moisture mitigation system. And when I say reputable, you're looking for one that's definitely designated F3010. It should be in their tech data sheet. It should be labeled on all of their packaging, you know, stating we do qualify. We're a two-part epoxy system. We hit all of the requirements that are there. You know, definitely make sure it is, 100% solids. You also want to make sure that it hits the right, you know, pounds for the calcium chloride, the ASTM 1869. You know, most of these systems are hitting the maximum levels, which is 25 pounds, and then 100% RH, which is your 2170. So you just want to make sure it's always up. pH resistant, of course. We all know if you have moisture, there's probably some sort of salt pushing through. We need to be able to take care of any high pH that's there. Pigmented for application. A lot of people don't realize when you have these two-part epoxies, if they're not pigmented and they're clear, as you're spreading them out to the proper mill thickness and, you know, requirements by the manufacturer, if it's not pigmented, sometimes you can't see where you start and you stop. So you kind of want to make sure that it's pigmented. Most manufacturers are pigmenting them now, so you can see where you start, where you stop, and go from there. The other thing too is the installation of your thin set, patch, or leveling products. How fast is it? There are some systems out there like MVC we have right here that you're installing in as little as, you know, 2 to 4 hours, as far as, you know, your thin sets, your primers, your levelers, and your patches. So just, you know, look and see. Some of these moisture mitigation systems that might be a little less expensive, but you're going to wait 16 hours before you can install on top of. So it varies on the project and what you're looking to achieve. And the final one is warranty. You want to make sure you have a very strong warranty with these products, because if anybody's seen a moisture failure that comes through, they're very expensive, because 9 chances out of 10 a moisture failure happens after the building's already been occupied, everything's already been done, the finishes are done, people are in there. So to actually fix a lot of this stuff is tear out, removal, and put back. You want to make sure the manufacturer has the warranty that will, you know, cover you from soup to nuts, that will, you know, cover the, you know, taking the furniture out, tear out, removal, put back in, all the stuff that goes with it. So warranty is big with these. On the resilient side, I can tell you, I've seen emergency rooms, ORs. I've seen the one CT scan room that had a failure, and they were being charged. The contractor was being charged almost $1 million a day until they got that operating section up and running again. It's very expensive if you if you miss it or overstep it. The other thing too is all the manufacturers have, most of them have good reps that are out there. Reach out to myself, you know, as far as the local territory manager you have. Be glad to come out and talk you through, you know, the different processes, you know, and show you, hey, this is what we need to do. Yeah, we have this issue here, and help out. But just these are just some bullet points to think about if you have a problem. Common questions that pop up when we talk about as far as the moisture mitigation. Can I grind the floor? With a two-part epoxy, most manufacturers will follow the epoxy industry standards and require a CSP of 2 or 3. A CSP, if you don't know, is a, you know, concrete surface profile. And it's more or less to give you an idea of what a 2 or 3 looks like. If you see a plain, you know, CMU or concrete block wall with no paint on it, that texture that's on the side, that is very close to a 2 or a 3. So they're not asking for you to come in and just completely destroy a floor and make it look like the moon. We're just trying to clean the floor and give a nice surface profile so that we get a good mechanical and chemical bond to the substrate. But when it comes to the grinding side of it, some companies will allow you to grind to achieve a CSP 2 or 3, because there are machines out there with scabblers and different heads on there they can put on the machines that can achieve it. I always just reach out to the manufacturer and ask. But most companies, they'll actually prefer shot blasting. The method is easy. It achieves CSP 2 or a 3. Should have actually put a picture of a shot blaster and I didn't, but it's a machine you walk behind. It's got a vacuum connected to it with HEPA filters. It legitimately shoots metal shot balls, down to the ground with a vacuum and a magnet, and it sucks them back up. But it really gives you a nice clean floor, especially for anything you're trying to do as far as putting down any type of mitigation system or even self-leveling or patching or even thin set. Just gives you that nice area. The picture you have here where you see the corn rows, that is from a shot blaster that came through and cleaned it up. The biggest note that I always like to explain when you're doing the mitigation shot blasting, it's definitely a cleaner prep process, I believe, than a guy coming in with a grinder. Less dust, just it's a little bit easier method. Too far. Should I mitigate repairs and slabs? Quick answer to that is if there's any concern, for your tile or finish assembly that could be impacted by moisture, I would absolutely mitigate the trenches and the repairs that come through. It's a quick, easy fix with the mitigation. We're not asking you to mitigate over the entire area. A lot of times we're only asking you to go 6 to 12 inches on each side of the trench that's cut through, just to take care of that green concrete that's put down so you don't have any moisture issues that come through. When you come into an area, if a guy's doing trenches, little tips and tricks, you can ask them just to do a quick broom finish across it or not steel trowel finish the area, especially if you're going to mitigate, because then you don't have to worry about doing a surface profile because you'll achieve it by doing the repairs, with a broom or a trowel. The other thing too with these repairs that I try to explain to people is when we talk about moisture vapor, we're not talking about true water. We're talking about a particulate. It only moves north and south. It doesn't move east and west. That's why you can actually address just these areas. What happens is it comes up, it hits straight up, it hits the moisture mitigation system, which is slowing down the perm rate of the moisture coming through, and it allows for it to be sustainable for the floor covering that's there. So to me, if there's any questions or thoughts as far as when I walk in and see, trenches put out, I would definitely repair them as far as just put a mitigation system or have a conversation with a general contractor. Big question that comes up with moisture mitigation is, can we fix hydrostatic pressure problems? Absolutely not. When you have water that's above your floor, and the wall's holding it back or something's holding it back, these mitigation systems, they'll hold it back for a little bit, but eventually they'll fail. So any type of hydrostatic stuff, every manufacturer is going to say we can't stop hydrostatic pressure. So that was kind of the quick overview on moisture with tile. The big thing is that I just want you guys to kind of understand is just keep your eyes and ears open, when you're on a job site thinking about, okay, I'm coming in, I'm setting this tile, could I have any issues with my grout? Could we have any effervescence pushing through salts that will, make the finish look, not pleasable to the owner? Just, keep your eyes and ears open on that kind of stuff. And if there's ever, any questions that come up, reach out, and there's always a way to, help you guys come up with a solution to fix the problem. Moving on to some of the other things we talked about, types of substrates that for insulation of tile. You guys know gypsum and concrete pretty much. Some guys might know plywood, but I just want to go over some of the little tips and tricks and give you kind of an overview of why tile guys might want to start looking at, self-leveling over wood versus, other types of applications. So one of the ways to prep over plywood OSB is to use the old method with the metal lath. A lot of people that have never tried self-leveling over wood with metal lath, I will tell you it's a taxing, but it's also a, you don't wear gloves, it will tear your hands apart. It can be a mess. So, I mean, just standard, steps, you walk into the area, just, secure, inspect your plywood, make sure it's down tight. If there's anything that's loose, tear it out, put it back in, clean, sound, solid. Clean the surface, of course. You want to sweep, vacuum, remove any dust, oils, anything that could be a bond breaker. You're going to prime the plywood. When it comes to primers, we'll talk about them in a little bit, but always use the manufacturer's approved primer for that substrate you're on. As far as, because you're going to find some manufacturers have 3 or 4 different primers that do 3 or 4 different things. You'll find some that, have one primer that takes care of everything. That's the way that we're handling with Custom Tech is we have one primer that's universal. It does porous and non-porous, goes over pretty much every substrate you can imagine. Just make sure you're using the right primer. Guys will lay out the lath, make sure your seams are sealed through, and then, fasten it down, staples, make sure everything's good to go. And then the biggest thing with this is plan your pour. When you're setting things up over the plywood, make sure you have your area where your mixing station is going to be to where you're actually going to come out of the room, so you don't, pin yourself in a corner. But that's the old way of, or not the old way, I guess you could say. It's still being used today, but it's a way of installing self-leveling over plywood. It was the means and methods for us to use a cement-based leveler over wood, that you would get the mechanical and the chemical bond to the substrate, which would allow for it to, really lock in and stay tight. More labor intensive. New ways that people are starting to come out is we're removing the lath. So we're coming up with products. One we have, it's called WSF with subfloor. No lath needed. Same principle for our prep, guys, is you're going to come in, you're going to inspect the floor, make sure everything is clean, sound, solid. If there's anything that's loose or whatnot, you take it out, you put it back in, you make sure it's down and really, really locked in. Clean the surface, of course. I always tell people, fill your gaps in your seams, make sure there's no penetrations where you could get some leakers that could come down through with a self-leveling material. Now from there, as you see, we're not putting lath in. So now we're able to, apply our primer. Once that's completely dry, then we can come in and pour. So we're saving that whole step of coming in and setting wire, either nailing it down, stapling it down. Really, it gives you a whole different dynamic for coming in over wood, especially, like I said, with the new products that are out nowadays, where they're more flexible, where they have better adhesion to the plywood, to the substrates. So there's different things to look for. But like I said, for us, we have WSF that will bond to pretty much anything. It is 100%. It is a cementitious, calcium aluminate self-leveling material. It is not a hybrid. It's not a gypsum leveler. It is a cement-based leveler. One of the benefits that I would like to talk through with the tile guys, and as far as architects and whoever else is listening, is self-leveling over plywood. Some of the old methods were using hardy backer board or cement board, or guys were even using thin sets and, building up with thin sets to try to hit certain levels and stuff like that. Self-leveling, when you really start to dive into it, it's going to create a nice flat smooth surface, which will help as far as laying out your substrate, as far as for your setting up your tile and everything else. It also helps as far as the bond of your thin set. Now you're bonding to another cement based product, so cement to cement loves each other, so you're going to have a nice bond and adhesion. Speed of installation, if you come in and you self level, most floors, especially wood, they undulate, they're up and down. If you self level and you get your floor flat, you'll eliminate a lot of the undulation that's in there. Now you're not having to shim or to float. You're not having to use spacers, as far as to shim out. It works really well on that. It saves labor and time. Most of the levelers that are out there now that you can go over top of wood with, you can pour a floor in the morning, and by lunchtime you can start installing tile. For us, with our custom tech levelers, you can install tile in as little as 4 hours. So you come in, get your floor set up, it's clean, sound, solid, prime it, pour it, and you're installing tile by lunchtime. Keeps going. It replaces a cement board, as I said earlier. You don't have to worry about handling it, cutting it, shimming it up. Just makes things a nice, easier installation. And it also creates a long-lasting base. You're having a subfloor in there that will be adhered to that wood. If someone does want to come in and change out the floor, calls you up and says, hey, I want to go with a new type of tile, you can go in and take it up, and you might just have a little bit of some pock marks and some gouges and stuff from knocking stuff out before to take off, but it gives you a nice base that will be there for a while. Prepping for concrete. We get into concrete, guys, you're going to start to notice, you're always going to want to inspect the slab you're walking into. You're checking for contaminations, you're checking for latenants, you're checking for any types of paints, anything that could be something that could be a bond breaker, anything that could be gone through. Some manufacturers will ask you to mechanically profile the concrete. Once again, they'll ask you to shot blast, they'll ask you to scarify, whatever, to get that CSP of 2 or 3. I always say avoid using any acid etching. There are some guys out there that will try to go in and use muriatic acid to pit and create some nice spalls and stuff in the slab, thinking they've got themselves a nice profile. But the problem is concrete's porous. It's going to suck that acid etch in, and we know as well as I do, once it's in, it's always going to want to come out back up to the top, just like oil, and it's going to eat whatever you put down on top of it, so you always have an issue. So for this, just follow the manufacturer's recommendations. For us with the custom tech products, we don't require a surface profile. We just follow as far as clean, sound, and solid. So if your floor is clean, sound, and solid, no surface profile needed. And it's common sense does come into play. If you've got overspray of paint, or if you have something down that needs to be removed, unfortunately, you have to take it off. You're only as good as what you bond to when it comes to your self-leveling materials. I put this in here as far as test for moisture, especially on new construction, because you just don't know if the slab's been rained on for 4 or 5 weeks. You just don't know what could be there. It's always better to be safe than sorry. If nothing else, ask the general contractor, because you might find out that the soft goods guy is already testing throughout the slab, or the general contractor might actually have in his contract to handle as far as the moisture testing. So just check and see as far as with moisture. And of course, guys, prime the concrete, with the approved primer. And then once that's cured out, you're going to pour it and go. Gypsum. So this can be a fun topic to discuss. I have some contractors that are always saying, you know, we don't go over gyp, we don't self-level over gyp, gyp to gyp type deal, stuff like that. With the technology and with the enhancements of materials nowadays, we can self-level over top of gypsum. So with doing so, the best thing to do, once again, is we're going to check through, make sure the gypsum's not soft. Any areas that are loose material or jacked up, we're going to have to take out. Test for surface strength. Some guys will do the scratch test. Some guys will do a true bonded test. They'll run the system and do a pull test to see what the PSI is. Most manufacturers are going to want the gypsum to be over 2,000 PSI before installing on top of. Is it being tested and checked every time on a job site? No. But you can tell if something's punky or not, if it's going to hold up and take care of your material you're going to put down. If you get into, you find out your surface is hard and everything else, now you're moving on to the next steps. Mechanically abrading the surface and vacuuming thoroughly. A lot of times we get into these gyp jobs, there's carpet glue that's stuck to the gypsum. You have all kinds of different stuff that could be there, patch that was left from before. You want to go in and you really want to try to scrape it up, clean it up. You do not want to really go in and be very overly aggressive with it, because once you break the surface of gypsum and really start to dive in, it could just redust and it could start to fall apart. So it's just be smart when you're coming in and doing the as far as the cleaning mechanical prep to the gypsum. Most companies, if you're going over gyp, when you start to get ready to do your installation, we're going to use what we call a double prime application. The double prime application is for us to make sure that we're getting the porosity out of the gyp. Gyp is like a true sponge. If you put water on gyp, it will suck it up right away. So for us, we're going to do what we call a double prime, and you're usually with the primers. I'll use Custom Tech's, or Tech Prime A as an example. We'll do 3 parts water to 1 part primer as our first. Mix that up, and then we broom that on. It will dry very quickly. Most gypsum applications, it dries within probably less than a minute. Once it's dry to touch, then we apply our second coat. From there, we're actually going to go to a 1-to-1. So 1 part water to 1 part primer. Now we're going to get a good, nice seal across the top of the gypsum. So you'll have your primer set, so it's locking in the top of the gyp. So then from there, you're able to, pour on top and go from there. With our Tech Prime A, also, if we're going over gypsum and you have a nice smooth surface, but you're not sure if the gypsum's sealed or not, our Tech Prime A can actually be used as a sealer. And if the gyp is, clean, sound, and solid, you can directly bond to it without having to put a level or a patch down. So you could come in, prime it up, and then start setting tile if you wanted to over top of gyp. And gyp's interesting. So, it is a very good product that's been around for, for a very long time. It does get a bad rap because of moisture and, site mixing and stuff. But, if you have a very strong gyp, substrate, they will last quite some time, and you should be able to adhere to it and go over it. The new one that people are starting to get into with self-leveling is guys are actually starting to self-level over uncoupling mats, and also the heat mats that are part of the uncoupling mats. So this here is, some guys look at this and they're kind of like, okay, why would I want to self-level over an uncoupling mat? biggest thing with this is you just want to make sure whatever manufacturer you're using is compatible with the uncoupling mat that you're using. From there, you're going to thin set this down just like you would your normal thin set. Modified thin set, set it, you know, seam it up, roll it. You're going to let it cure out. Most manufacturers are going to tell you let it sit overnight, come back in. Some manufacturers will tell you to prime over top of the uncoupling mats. Some manufacturers will not. I can tell you we do not. It's kind of a waste of material for us as far as pouring over top of plastic. But some companies, I guess, want to have that, make sure they have a mechanical and chemical bond. Going to mix up your leveler, pour it in. You know, you're going to get it set to the flatness that you're looking for. Some mats do have a requirement as far as, you know, certain thicknesses you have to be above or below. You know, as far as your grooves and your little pock marks. But once you have them set, you know, you go through. What is really nice about pouring over top of an uncoupling mat is it's going to give you a pretty straightforward, flat, smooth surface, guys. So you don't have to worry about shimming things up. You don't have to worry about, you know, trying to put in the clips and go from there. It's going to give you a nice base, a nice substrate to work off of. Benefits for going over top of uncoupling mats. As I said just before, nice flat surface. It's going to allow you guys to come in and start setting, you know, your tile, especially these larger tiles where we all know you have to be an 1/8 and 10. You know, you come in, you pour out, you have a nice flat surface. It makes things easier. It saves time and time and money. You know, it supports as far as your floor height adjustments. If you're in there and you know you need to, you know, the room slopes a little bit, or you got a threshold you got to, instead of building up a thin set, you could actually have it pre-leveled and set out. And then, you know, you're ready to rock. So it's, you know, keeping things going. Reduces the hollow spots, of course, under tile, going from there. But then also, you know, enhances your warranty. There's a lot of manufacturers out there now that are, when you pour self-leveling, you know, over top, it adds to your installation warranties. You know, instead of getting, you know, a 5-year, 10-year warranty, you might end up qualifying for a 25-year warranty. So it allows and, you know, gives you different variables. The big thing with this as well is, you know, I think it's going to be, you're standing up. It's making things easier for you guys. Primers. Just want to throw a quick little notes on some primers here. Primers, guys, for self-leveling materials. A lot of guys are kind of like, you know, don't need them. Should I have them? Always use a primer as far as whatever you're going to do when you're self-leveling. Always use a primer. It binds the, you know, the dust in, helps clean it. It suppresses the suction for the substrate. If you've ever poured a leveler over top of a very porous substrate and it's not primed, you'll lose the life out of your products. You lose the yield out of your products, so you're not getting the coverage you're supposed to. Sometimes you'll get drying variances throughout, so you might get some surface defects. You could get some shrinkage cracks, a bunch of different things just because of just a simple little primer that a lot of times you're only waiting an hour to install after. Once it's dry to touch, you're able to install on top of. So it makes things easy on that way. But primers, I always tell guys, if you're getting levelers or you're sending a guy to go pick up leveler for you, make sure he comes back with primer. Some companies are okay with, you know, using someone else's primer or whatnot, but I'm not a big fan of it. But yeah, I mean, just make sure there's a primer down. Areas as far as just review steps for applications, you know, make sure the substrate's been properly prepared and primed. Big thing is leakers. Make sure we address them for all types of applications. I can tell you my favorite is the mall story that we had where a guy was self-leveling above an Apple store and did not realize that the penetrations weren't set for the plumbing and electrical. And he got a phone call very quickly that the self-leveling material was leaking through into the storage room with all of the Mac appliances. It was awesome. Same thing as far as, mask out and protect yourself. Windows, believe it or not, it's just like for you guys with, your tile and stuff, windows can change, as far as the conditions of a slab, can make it hotter, make it cooler. So always keep things, in mind with that. Air vents and drafts, as far as with, if you have a building that is acclimated and it's pumping out, cold air. I mean, I'm in Pennsylvania today and it's 103. So you might end up, pouring, and next thing you know, you see an area that looks like it's drying faster. It's probably because an air vent's pushing air straight down top of it. Mixing stations with dust control. And just make sure your workers, are trained for each specific job. It becomes an assembly line when guys are pouring and stuff. As far as just make sure, each guy understands what they got going on, and always have a backup plan. Have, garbage pail, a shovel, an extra drill. You just never know what might go down. Unfortunately, with self-leveling, once you start, a lot of times it's hard to stop, unless you have a nice place that you could change a plane and actually stop. But once you go, you go. So if something goes down, you could always have more of an issue later on. Tips for self-leveling as well. Like today, like I said earlier, it's hot temperatures. I always tell guys, take ice, put it in your water container. Just take the bags of ice and just drop them in there. Keep that water cool. If you, these are all calcium aluminate products. If you have warm water or hot water, they will set up so quickly. You won't even be able to work with them. So you want to keep that mixed water as cool as possible. I know nobody on here will, do this, but when I say put the bag of ice in the barrel of water, don't break the bag and dump the ice in. We've actually had guys that say I've got issues because it's, got lumps and I've got areas and stuff because they legitimately were mixing ice with the water, with the material. Close windows and doors to prevent air movement. Direct sunlight, as I said before, it can always, create issues. Extra tools, and always, if you're pouring, put your first coat of diluted primer on late in the evening, the day before you're going to pour. That's a great one. If you're going to pour tomorrow morning, right before you leave, and all the other construction workers and all the other trades are getting off, go ahead, prime that area, get it set for the next morning. So when you get in there, you can stage your material, get yourself to go, and it's one less step you have, to do when you get to work. Outcomes: air movement, heat, under and over mixing, and pour primer application. These are pretty much standards you can try to avoid, hopefully avoid. The picture you see there, that is actually from air movement pushing across underneath a doorway that didn't have the weather seal on it. And it actually dried out the surface of the leveler and made it crack like that, almost kind of like a cake top. I didn't talk about, individual self-leveling materials and different products and stuff. Custom Tech for us, we have a full line of prep products. For when it comes down to when we developed Custom Tech, it was contractor driven, and it still is. You will see with our product line, it's a smaller product line. We have legitimately just a handful of levelers. We have 3 patches, 2 primers, 1 mitigation. That's it. And it's for ease of use. For us, we know that on most guys, it's 1 or 2 levelers that you need, all the time. You need something that's economical, and you need something that's either going to run thin to thick or something to go over top of strange substrate. So for us, I mean, we try to keep things simple. Same as other manufacturers. You know, they all have different types of products for different types of installations and setups. So it's something to always, you know, take a look at and see. I will tell you, not all levelers are equal. There are some that are, you know, really, really well established and well made. And then there are some that, you know, they'll sell you the bill of goods that might not be suitable for the application that you're looking to do. Just make sure you get the right product for your installation. Wanted to bring up a couple other things here, guys, and I'll be wrapping up. Methods and standards. There's standards for self-leveling that has been updated. So we do now have an A10821 for installation of interior installation of flowable hydraulic cement, self-leveling underlayment. And then we also have the A11816 flowable cement for self-leveling underlayment. So that we do have standards, guys, from ANSI and ASTM for installation methods for hydraulic, you know, cement underlayments. And if you can find all this stuff in your installation ceramic, you know, books and stuff like that. One of the things that we also kind of pride ourselves on, if you guys need a copy of, you know, a book or the, you know, TCNA handbook, let, you know, myself know, let Howard Jancy know. He's our architectural rep from Custom Building Products. He's been in the industry for a very long time. Very, very well knowledgeable guy. We'd be glad to send you guys one if you guys need something. It's as simple as just reaching out to us and getting what you need, and be glad to help out. Other things too, there are, you know, reference guides out there for how you want to do these installations that break things down for you. You know, the top one there, the wood, which is the old method primer, and then, you know, your lath and your leveler, and, you know, going from there. So there are different references to help you guys to learn more about the actual practicality of the installations. In there, and there, and there. Questions? I know we're holding questions off till the end and going from there, but I kind of buzzed through this pretty quickly.
Matt, real quickly, you did a fantastic job, a lot of information. I loved your tips. We do have at least a couple questions right now, and if any of you have questions out there, please type them in the questions area and we'll try to answer them at the end here. So the first question, Matt, is moisture is a big issue everywhere. Please share ASTM F3010-13. Can you go through that again?
All right, so that's the that is the standard for the two-part epoxy mitigation system. So when you are trying to remediate any types of moisture, that is the standard that we recognize for suppressing moisture. So with the two-part epoxy system, what it's doing is it's allowing the moisture to slowly perm through to reach the acceptable levels of the flooring that's going in. So most floorings, if you're trying to get to the bare bottom, it's like 75% RH, or, you know, 3 pounds calcium chloride. So these mitigation systems, that standard is telling the contractors, this is what you need to use. This is the process to achieve that, to get these results. That's what the 3010 is.
Great. And following along on that, the next question is, can you clarify or confirm the moisture or vapor cannot go around the mitigation if you do not do the entire area? I hope you understood that.
Yeah, so yes, you can just spot fix areas. So moisture vapor itself will not go east and west. It only goes north and south. There's been a lot of discussion on, you know, what's moisture is water, this, that. We're talking about moisture vapor. So we're talking of more or less like a gas of sort, which will accumulate underneath a mitigation system. But if your mitigation system is prepared properly, it's going to allow that material, vapor to still pass through at a slower rate that doesn't affect your flooring. So yes, you can legitimately just spot fix and do areas of your building instead of doing the whole thing.
Well, Matt, fantastic presentation, lots of information. I want to remind everyone that is still on our webinar here. Do not hesitate to reach out to the technical people of the manufacturer of the self-leveling unit product that you're going to use. It doesn't matter who it is, they're there for you, they'll answer your questions. It's better to be safe than sorry. And you always follow manufacturer's recommendation. That supersedes anything from TCNA or NTCA. Definitely follow their recommendations. So thank you all for attending. Oh, we've got a couple more here. Hold on. We got some more questions that just came in, Matt. All right, here's the next one. I have always been told the leveling or patch needed to be placed prior to installing the uncoupling or heat mat membrane. Just so I understand you correctly, are you saying you can apply them on top of it?
Yes. So custom building products, we do allow us to use our leveling products over top of our custom uncoupling mat, and we also allow it to go over top of Schluter's mat.
So those two. So you still would want to
Well,
ask
I mean, there's
the other manufacturers, right? But if it's Schluter or custom mat, you can go over that.
yes, and there are others that I believe that Mike Michelizzi, who's head of our technical, that we have tested and approved. Just off the top of my head, I'm not 100% sure, but that's where it comes in. Give one of our territory managers or call our tech department, and they'll walk you through it, and they'll tell you, hey, sure, that's that uncoupling mat is okay, or we've never tested that one, but we can test it for you and let you know. So there's a lot of things that we can do to help out.
I agree. Always check with your technical rep. It'll be a big help and save a lot of questions and frustration. I want to thank all of you for attending today. It was a great program. Remember, you can always look on the NTCA YouTube channel to watch this. Probably will be up on Thursday morning, and you can share it with any others that are in question or would like to learn about it. So, Matt, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Everybody have a great week, and if I don't hear from you, have a great 4th of July. Take care.
Excellent.
Bye.
Thank you so much.